at the start of your life, when you're born here, you kind of knew who you were. You had the whole picture. But then as you start to grow up, it's like these puzzle pieces start to fall apart and you forget who you are. These pieces, they go everywhere. All these little thoughts you have, all these problems we create in our life, it's like all the puzzle pieces scattering everywhere. But then as you go throughout your life and you start to understand things and you learn lessons and you get why things are happening the way they're happening, you put together the puzzle pieces again. So essentially you're just putting the picture back together, piece by piece. Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I want to talk about how life is a video game. Honestly, it feels very much like a video game, and this is coming from someone who is looking at life from, you could say, a very high up perspective, a very overarching perspective at this point. The way that I understand the world feels like I am looking not down on it, but I'm seeing through it, is the way that I can best describe it. And from this perspective, I can tell you that everything in your experience is a metaphor. It is so funny to me now. Everything around you is just a metaphor for what is going on inside of you. And it is pushed outside of you so that you can see it and that you can change it. And the only thing you really have to do is understand why something is happening, understand what it is teaching you, and then immediately, once you gain that understanding, you can move forward to the next level in life. Because what happens when you don't understand is that you tend to repeat the loop or the same cycle over and over and over until you get it. And this is what we talk about, the universe being unraveling to you or having layers, is because the more you repeat the same cycle, the more deep your understanding gets. Because it's like, if you didn't learn the lesson the first time around, you continue to repeat it over and over and over. And that's what people say in life, right? They didn't learn their lesson, so they keep going back to the same person again, the same type of person, or, you know, they keep doing the same things. They keep wondering why this is happening to them, but then they don't actually do anything about it. And a lot of the time people say, why me, or why is this happening to me? But then they don't look further than that, because it's important to ask yourself why something's happening. But then it's also important to say, okay, now what is this teaching me? So why is it happening and what is it teaching me? So start looking at your life as a series of metaphors. Everything that's happening to you, don't look at it and take it for just the face value. Look at it as something deeper. Try to see what metaphor you can gain from it. And I'm going to give you an example so that you kind of understand what I mean here. So in my life, something that was happening to me is when I moved into my new house, immediately, just after moving in, I understood that there was an issue in the basement where every time I would do laundry, it would overflow. All of the water would overflow. And this was actually, it started happening just a little while after I'd been here. And this is also when I was at the high point of a business I was working on, and I was very stressed out all the time. And so every time I'd wash my laundry or do a big load, it would overflow completely all over the basement. It was really frustrating. But I thought it wasn't my fault because it had to be the person before me that lived here, because I really didn't do anything. I had barely lived here. But so we had a guy come in to look at it, and he said that I was going to have to pay, I think it was $3,000 to have this fixed, because there was roots of a tree outside that were like growing. I don't know everything about this, so don't quote me on this, but they were growing like in front of it or somehow blocking the pipes outside. It was something to do with the roots of the tree in my yard, which I find this really funny. It was the roots that were blocking it, and we talk all the time about the flow of consciousness and something blocking it. Yeah. So this was going on. And I, of course, panicked. I was like, how am I going to pay all this? I just moved in. Like, I don't have money to spend on this. So we kind of just dealt with it for a bit ourselves. We would clean it up. And eventually, though, as I was going through, you know, dealing with my business, I kind of had things fall apart back then. And that's when I had more time to sort of think about my life. When my business sort of went downhill, I had to kind of look inwards towards myself, because what I used to do is that I would be so headstrong in my business. I would work so hard all the time. I would never take breaks, and I wasn't someone who would just express their emotions all the time. I would let it build up to the point where I would get so overwhelmed that I would finally have to tell someone, and I would just like have a mental breakdown in that moment. And that's essentially what happened with my business. I had basically a mental breakdown because I had held it off for so long. I realized later that this was correlated to the stuff happening in my basement, because as soon as I started to deal with my emotions more as they came up and not just leave it all until it would completely just explode, overflow out of me, then it stopped happening. And it was crazy. It was like the moment I understood that it was like a metaphor for what was happening with me, it just stopped happening. And I'm not kidding. It was 2 years since then, and it hasn't happened ever again. And I never changed anything. We never fixed anything. And this has happened to me now multiple times in all areas of my life. Every time I find the meaning of something and I understand it and I make a change within myself, that problem goes away. So it's not even the outside world that you need to change. It's just you understand the problem, you look at it from a metaphorical standpoint, and then you see inside yourself what it is that you can change. And then that in turn changes the outside problem. Once you change yourself, your outside problem also changes. And it's like you exit the loop. You can think of it like the lines on a tree. You jump to the next circle now. It's like you jump to the next level in life. And if you don't pass that level, you will continue to repeat that level over and over again until you get it right. And you can't really manifest your way out of a level if you're not understanding why you're there in the first place. I think an important quote too that can help you understand this is from the Matrix movie, when she says, you've already made the decision. You're here to understand why you made the decision. I think that's also important. So start looking into more of why something's happening in your life, and don't just get angry at the problem, but actually look at, okay, what is this teaching me about myself? What is this teaching me about something going on internally within me? And that's how you advance to the next level. All right, and the coolest part about understanding this, there is such an important message in all of this, and this is the part that took me the longest to understand. But when you make this connection between you and the outside thing that's happening to you, it's like going from duality to non-duality. It's like going from you and this outside thing being two separate things to now you and this outside thing being one. And when that happens, you fuse yourself with this outside thing. And when you fuse something to you, it's essentially like moving that thing to your past. Because when in your life do you understand things? When do you understand why something happened to you? It's when you look back on it, right? So the moment that you can make the connection between you and that outside thing, it's like you bring the two of you together, and now that thing becomes your past because you've learned the lesson. It can go behind you now. That's how you move to the next level, is you make the connection. You understand what this point in your life is teaching you, what this level is teaching you. And as soon as you do that, you bring the two together as one, and that is how it becomes your past. Because every time you look back on your past, you can see now behind you, when you look back on your life, you can see why things had to happen the way they happened, right? This is what you're doing. Every level you go through, you're fusing things together. You're creating the connection between you and your higher self again. You are putting together the puzzle pieces of who you are again. Because you can think of at the start of your life, when you're born here, you kind of knew who you were. You had the whole picture. But then as you start to grow up, it's like these puzzle pieces start to fall apart and you forget who you are. And these pieces are like in all different directions. They go everywhere. All these little thoughts you have, all these problems we create in our life, this illusion of problems and things we have to solve. It's like all the puzzle pieces scattering everywhere. But then as you go throughout your life and you start to understand things and you learn lessons and you get why things are happening the way they're happening, and you start to, you know, accept more of the flow of life, you put together the puzzle pieces again. So essentially, you're just putting the picture back together, piece by piece. And another way I like to think of it is, funny example, the movie Monsters, Inc. Think of in the movie when he walks through the door to see Boo. He just walks in, he can go in, and that's how he meets her. And then afterwards, when they don't want him to visit her anymore, they break down the door into pieces, right? And then his friend, Sully, or what's his name? Not Sully. Mike puts the pieces back together, right? And then Sully has the last piece and he puts it in the door, and now he can walk through the same door again. Your life is like that. You're basically putting yourself back together piece by piece so that you can walk through the door again, back to where you came from. That's what's happening. So just realize that you are not separate from anything going on outside of you. Every single person you see is you. They're just reflecting something in you, a lesson that you have to relearn. It's funny because we create these lessons for ourselves. Life is really just a learning ground for us. It's understanding who we are and coming back together with ourselves piece by piece. Funny example in my own life is that when I was younger, I was 15 years old, I had spinal fusion surgery. And now I look back on that and I think that that was for a reason, because I was meant to teach on these topics, because my whole upper spine was fused as one solid piece. So I don't have all these little separations in my spine, meaning that maybe I was meant to be someone who was easily able to start to put their life back together, I guess, or start to understand the whole picture is what I should say. I think of that now, and I think it's really funny, the way that I talk about fusion now and fusing things back together, but that's what life is about. We're just taking the same puzzle pieces and we're just putting them back together again. So I hope that this video is helpful. I hope that this makes sense to you, this concept, because this is how you get to the next level in your life, is that you start to understand you are not separate from anything outside of you, and you see every problem in front of you as not so much a problem, but just a lesson to remind you of who you really are. And what you really are is everything. Everything, everywhere, all at once, just like that movie's called. And again, I get that comment all the time in my videos for that movie name. And everyone that has said that comment, again, I channeled that message like I think 3 years ago or something, before that movie ever came out. I used to say, I'm everything everywhere all at once. That's what it feels like. I used to say that all the time. So anyways, very funny. But thank you guys again for watching. If you haven't heard, I have a membership section now for this channel. It's where I'm going to be posting additional content. So for this video in particular, I'm going to be sharing additional examples of other scenarios you may be experiencing in your life right now, what they're really implying behind the scenes, what they mean about you. So I'm going to give multiple examples of different things you could be going through right now, and I'm going to explain what it is internally that you need to work on to solve that particular situation. And as I've said before, move to the next level once you do that. So if you're interested, if you want to join the membership part of the channel, I would really appreciate it. I'm also going to be sharing a personal experience that I had in this part of the channel that was very, very impactful on my life and everything that I believe now. So if you want to hear about that, I'm going to be sharing that there too. Thank you so much to everyone who's already joined. I really, really appreciate it. I hope that we can build a large community there. I will be responding to comments more often in that section as well than on my main channel, so just keep that in mind if you're interested in joining. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one either way. Thank you so much.